will bless the Lord at all times, with praise ever in my mouth. Let my soul glory in the Lord, who will hear the cry of the poor. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. We proclaim your greatness above, your praise ever in our mouth. Every face brightened in your love. We will hear the cry of the Lord hears the cry of the blessed be
The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
A reading from the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus left Tyrian territory and returned by way of Sidon to the Sea of Galilee into the district of the 10 cities. Some people brought him a deaf man who had a speech impediment and begged him to lay his hands on him. Jesus took him off by himself, away from the crowd. He put his fingers into the man's ears and, spitting, touched his tongue. Then he looked up to heaven and emitted a groan. He said to him, "Ephphatha," that is, be opened. At once the man's ears were opened. He was freed from the impediment and began to speak plainly. Then he enjoined them strictly not to tell anyone, but the more he ordered them not to, the more they proclaimed it. Their amazement went beyond all bounds. He has done everything well. He makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. The Gospel of the Lord. Alleluia. Alleluia. You may have seen this story on Facebook. It was going around a couple of years ago. And as far as I can tell, from what I've understood, it was a true story of an Episcopal priest who had been made rector, we would call pastor, of a new church. And upon his first Mass, the first Sunday of him being there to celebrate and preach and sacraments, he waited outside the church first, dressed in shabby clothes, and to many appeared to be a beggar. He went into the church, and most people ignored him, stayed away from him, sat elsewhere. And when it came time for Mass to actually begin and everyone was waiting, where's the rector? He gets up from his seat and comes up through the aisle into the sanctuary and introduces himself as their new rector. Eyes went to the ground. I'm sure that feelings of guilt overtook them, and he used that as his homily, as his first sermon to his new flock. Jesus comes to us in people that we don't often recognize, people that we don't often see, people that we wouldn't necessarily think. When Jesus says, "You did this to the least of my brothers or sisters, you did it to me," he was speaking rather literally. The conversation that we just had actually before Mass about the rising seas, and we sort of, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, were saying, you know, Delaware River will become the new coastline. And that actually is a possibility with what we are doing to our planet. We have in our country right now, despite numbers that people tout as our economy doing well, we actually have less buying power for the dollars that we have than we did 10 years ago. Families are having to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, in order to make a decent life for their families. The number of veterans who commit suicide, who are homeless, defies our country's zeal over issues of flag and patriotic postures for our national anthem. All of these things, we have the power to solve. The problems that are happening in our planet, we actually can correct. It means we have to stop using fossil fuels. And that means we have to stop all use of carbon-based fuel now. We have the technology to do it. It's expensive. We have the power to feed, clothe, and shelter every single person on the planet and live in a style that would be the mid-80s in Europe. We have the ability to quite easily help our veterans who've come home from war, from serving us, so they're not in peril. We have the ability to give health care to every single person in this country and do it more cheaply than the rate that health care is going and rising through the roof. The impediment to all of these things is greed. It is greed and the manipulation of power by those at the top. That's what's preventing us. It's the fear engendered in us by those in authority and government right now that one over there is the cause of your problems. That one over there is the cause of your problems. No. Stop looking at where they're pointing. We hear very clearly today in the readings that God hears the cry of the poor. I loved Isaiah. I loved the reading from Isaiah this morning, or this evening. Say to those whose hearts are frightened, be strong, fear not. Here is your God. He comes with vindication. With divine recompense, he comes to save you. Now, we know that God has saved us from our sinfulness. Or do we know that? Because if we really know that, we would act like we knew it. We would live like we knew it. We would not be afraid of the stranger, the refugee, the one who is different. We would not be afraid of those who love differently. We would not be afraid of those who question and push our boundaries of gender understanding. We would not turn our backs on the sick and push them aside. We would realize that their sickness is a reminder of our own mortality. We would not walk past people who are homeless. And we would not allow those in power to manipulate us and to divide us so that they can continue to abuse us and continue to overpower us. No, if we live as God's children in the salvation of Jesus Christ, in whose baptism we have committed ourselves, then we have to be that vindication of God. We have to be the justice of God. I love all of you and think that we do what we can as a small community. We do pretty well. But we have to give witness. We have to not become discouraged in what little that we can do. We have to keep pushing ourselves to do a little bit more. Raise our voices just a little louder. Go to that voting box every single time that we can. Write one more letter to a congressman. Send or make choices about your monetary spending based on what the company stands for and what they do. If we can do this, then we can, as James said, not show favoritism. We can recognize Jesus in that person, that homeless person, that person of maybe we would say of lower class, of being impoverished, sitting out on the church step. We would recognize that person as Jesus and do what we could. And we would not allow the structures around us to keep Jesus down. Just think about that. If that were Jesus, we would not tolerate our government structures, our societal structures, our economic structures doing that. Every single person you see on the street, see that person as Jesus. If that doesn't motivate us to do what we need to do to bring God's kingdom in our midst, nothing will. Blessed be the name of the Lord.